to talk more about this puzzle and what goes into the prosecution of this suspect and how they have to bring a case and how and why. I want to bring into that end CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller, also criminologist and author Scott Bond, who you can see on a national speaking tour right now. It's titled Serial Killers with Dr. Scott Bond. Also here, former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. Thank you all for being here. I want to begin with the investigation, John, because you know authorities are uncovering the suspect's digital footprint as we're even talking right now. And the FBI director is revealing that tonight the suspect wrote in a text message, quote, "Some hatred cannot be negotiated with." So walk me through, as you've been evaluating everything, what do you think is the most important piece of evidence or pieces you've seen so far? And obviously, it's the prosecutor's burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So what more are they looking to find?
Well, Laura, it's the totality of the evidence and the way the pieces fit together. Perhaps the strongest evidence is something the FBI director revealed today when he said that DNA test matched DNA found on the towel that the gun, the murder weapon, was wrapped in, as well as a screwdriver, which investigators believe was used to break down the gun in order to sneak it into the building before the shooting. But that also fits with a statement by the suspect's father, allegedly made to a deputy sheriff, saying that his son had admitted to being the shooter, and statements made to the deputy sheriff implying that he'd been the shooter. And then conversations he had with his friends on their Discord chat platform, where they said it looked like him, and he jokingly said, yeah, the guy's my look-alike, my doppelganger. But just before he was arrested, coming back in and making that alleged confession where he says, I have bad news, it was me. That was me at UVU. And then explaining that he had been confronted by his father and, spoke to the sheriff and that they were on their way to get him. So when you look at all of that together, along with the photographs of him arriving, the photographs of him leaving, the video that is allegedly him where he can't be identified, but piece all that together, and you, as a former federal prosecutor, would say, I would go to court with that with some degree of confidence.
At the very least, it's enough for probable cause for the charges that he will be filed against tomorrow, and then possibly the next steps of the trial date and beyond. And now for people who look at it and say, Scott, look, this is open and shut. If there's a confession, if there's all these things that John has mentioned, but still you have to prove the case in court in order to get a conviction, and there's still a lot that has to be done, even with all the things, if true, and a certainty are there. But there's also reporting, Scott, from the Washington Post and the New York Times that suggests that he communicated with acquaintances after the shooting. And as John talked about the doppelganger comment and beyond, what does it tell you that he didn't sort of go MIA, that if he confessed in this manner or joked about this or even thanked the people for the fun times they had?
At some level, Laura, I believe that he is proud of what he did. And this is something that had been planned for quite a while, I'm sure. And while we don't know the specific motive, I can almost guarantee you it's rooted in rage in some way, and it's highly specific. And I think Charlie Kirk represented something both personal to him as well as symbolic. And he was striking out at things that he had grown to hate and resent. And I'm talking about Christian conservatism and gun ownership. And so at some level, I think he was actually taking recognition, saying, yes, I did this, and at some level, taking some pride in it.
I wonder, he's not really speaking to investigators. I think we're finding Neama on this very point. Now, he doesn't have to, right? It's his absolute right to remain silent. He doesn't have to say cooperate as, say, a witness in a case or somebody who would be a co-conspirator or defendant with a deal of any kind. But he's not being forthcoming at this juncture. And we know that tomorrow, Utah, they're going to file charges officially against him tomorrow. He's already being held on several things like aggravated murder and felony discharge of a firearm and obstruction of justice. These are state level charges. What role will the federal government play here, if any?
I think the federal government is going to file this case. When you have the President of the United States, you have the Attorney General, you have the Director of the FBI talking about a case, you're likely going to see federal charges. And we've seen it in other cases, obviously Luigi Mangione, DeCarlos Brown in North Carolina. Those cases are a little bit unique because New York doesn't have the death penalty. North Carolina has really a hold on the death penalty because even though it's legal under state law, a physician has to be present and the medical board isn't allowing it. Utah, of course, does have the death penalty. Now, they haven't had an execution in 15 years, but they do have lethal injection. They even have the firing squad as a backup. So after tomorrow, the state has 60 days to file their notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I fully expect that to happen because that's what President Trump and the governor of Utah have both said will happen. So from there, the question is, what does Robinson's defense do? Like John said, it is a very strong case in terms of the evidence. So do they start to put on some sort of mitigation package to try to save his life? Maybe try to work out some sort of deal? I don't know if they'll offer a deal. This is one of the most high-profile murders, certainly in recent history right now. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the defense to try to save his life. Because in terms of the evidence, obviously there's a presumption of evidence, but like you said, it's pretty much an open and shut case from a guilt perspective.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I hesitate only because, John Miller, it wouldn't be premature to note that this is obviously a probable cause finding. And yet the investigators will always treat this as if they do not have an open and shut case, right? The very prudent investigator will be very diligent to make sure no stone is left unturned, every T is crossed, every I is dotted to make sure they're not relying on just one bit of evidence, but everything cumulatively. But yet you've got the Deputy FBI Director, Dan Bongino, John, who's not ruling out a wider conspiracy, despite multiple officials believing that the suspect acted entirely alone. Are you getting any indication from your reporting that the investigation is pointing to other conspirators?
No, the signal we're getting is the opposite. But as you also know, the FBI deputy director would be irresponsible not to say, we are pulling that thread all the way backwards. Was there someone else who knew? Who were these text messages to? And, you know, they were in advance of the killing. Was it a hint or was it more than that? Did they have knowledge beforehand? Did they have knowledge after the fact? What about everybody in that chat room? Are they going to be interviewed about their conversations outside that chat room with the suspect online, by text, by phone, by voice, in person? You really have to go backwards to look for two things. One, what was he consuming online or in other places that brought him to the point that he felt he had to do this murder? And two, who was consuming it with him? Who was he sharing that with? They're going to have to know that the answer to all those questions is nothing and nobody, or they're going to have to know who and when and where, and the case could expand.
It certainly could, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll get a really comprehensive look at what they know so far and the charges that correspond to it. Thank you, everyone. Still